We believe our world is permanent, an unbreakable upward line of progress. We believe our steel is stronger, our knowledge is greater, and that our civilization is the one that will last forever. This is an illusion. History is not a line, it is a graveyard, a field of ghosts littered with the bones of civilizations that were just as advanced, just as powerful, and just as certain of their own immortality right before they vanished. Today, we are not just looking at ruins. We are opening 5 case files on 5 of the most advanced civilizations in history that were erased from the earth. And we still do not know why. Our first ghost is a paradox. In the vast floodplain of the Indus River in modern-day Pakistan and India, a civilization flourished that, in many ways, rivaled ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. We call them the Harappans, or the Indus Valley Civilization. This was not a primitive society. This was perhaps the most organized society of the ancient world. They had a population of over 5 million. Their cities were masterpieces of urban planning, laid out in perfect grids with sophisticated covered sewer systems and private indoor bathrooms 4,000 years ago. They had a uniform system of weights and measures. They had a written language, which to this day we cannot read. And most baffling of all, they seem to have been a civilization without war. In all their vast cities, archaeologists have found almost no weapons, no swords, no shields, no city walls built for defense. They were a peaceful, complex, and orderly society, larger than the Kingdom of Egypt. And then, around 1800 BCE, they vanished. This is the 0 point of the Indus mystery. It was not a collapse as we know it. There was no fire, no massacre, no final battle. The cities were not destroyed. The people just left. For decades, the official story was a massive invasion, the Aryan invasion. But the evidence simply isn't there. There are no layers of ash, no mass graves. The current safe theory is climate change. The monsoon pattern shifted. The great Saraswati River, their lifeline, dried up, turning their fertile paradise into a desert. It is a logical theory, but it feels incomplete. How does a civilization of 5 million people, spread over 1 million square kilometers, vanish so completely? Why did their undeciphered language die with them, leaving no echo? The Indus Valley is the ghost of a perfect machine that one day just turned itself off. Our second ghost is a different kind of horror. This was not a peaceful disappearance. This was a catastrophic failure of one of the most brilliant societies on Earth, the Maya. We know their achievements. They were masters of mathematics. They invented the concept of zero, independently of the rest of the world. They were astronomers so precise, their calendars carved in stone could predict eclipses hundreds of years into the future. They built vast, beautiful cities like Tikal, Palais, and Copan, cities of stone pyramids ruled by god-kings, home to hundreds of thousands of people. They were at their absolute peak of power, culture, and intellectual achievement. And then, in the 8th and 9th centuries, In the space of just 2 or 3 generations, it all ended. They stopped carving their histories in stone. They stopped building their monuments, and they walked away. They abandoned their great cities, their pyramids, their palaces, and let the jungle simply take them back. Why? How does a civilization this sophisticated, this smart, commit societal suicide? The overall tone points once again to climate. A series of devastating 100-year droughts proven in the geological record. The droughts led to crop failure, which led to resource wars between the city-states, which led to a collapse of faith in the god-kings who claimed to control the rain. It is a perfect, logical chain of events. But the zero-point lore asks a more disturbing question. What if this wasn't just a drought? The Maya, of all people, understood cycles. Their calendars were obsessed with them. What if their astronomers saw something coming, not just a drought, but a cyclical event, a great filter that they knew they could not fight? What if the abandonment of the cities was not a panic, but a plan? The Maya did not die out, they scattered. But the central complex wisdom of their civilization vanished as if they too had chosen to let it die. Our third ghost is the civilization that may have been the source for the greatest lost civilization of all, Atlantis. The Minoans, the first great maritime empire of Europe. Based on the island of Crete, they were not warriors. They were traders, artists, and engineers. Their palaces, like Naxos, were not dark fortresses. They were sprawling, open-air labyrinths with stunning frescoes, advanced plumbing, and light-filled courtyards. They were the masters of the Mediterranean. And then, around 1450 BCE, they were erased. For a long time, the official story was simple and it was epic. The colossal volcanic eruption at Thera, modern-day Santorini. A blast so powerful it vaporized an entire island and sent a 100-foot-tall tsunami to wash Crete clean. It was the perfect cinematic explanation. A civilization killed in a single day by an act of God. Case closed. But it's wrong. This is the fracture point. Modern archaeology has proven that the Minoans survived. The blast from Thera was devastating, yes. It crippled their fleet and buried their coastal towns. But the civilization endured. They rebuilt. They continued to trade. They held on. But the official story has a second, darker chapter. In the chaotic aftermath of the eruption, a new power arrived. Warriors from mainland Greece, the Mycenaeans. They saw a civilization on its knees, and they struck. Archaeological layers show a second wave of destruction, a wave of fire, of conquest. The Minoans were not killed by a volcano. They were finished off by us. A zero-point lesson that a cataclysm is often just the beginning. The chaos it creates is a vacuum that human violence is all too eager to fill. Our fourth ghost haunts the deserts of the American Southwest, and it asks the most paranoid question of all. What do you do when your fortress isn't safe? We call them the Anasazi, or the ancestral Puebloans. For over 1,000 years they thrived. They were master architects and farmers. But then, around the year 1150 AD, their entire society changed. It became defensive, paranoid. They abandoned their open, easy-to-access villages and began to build here, in these impossible, sheer cliff faces. These are not villages, these are fortresses. Cities like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon were architectural miracles, accessible only by tiny hand and toe holds carved into the vertical rock. They were, by all accounts, the safest, most impregnable homes on Earth. And then, after building this impossible sanctuary, after investing generations of labor to create a fortress in the sky, they left.
By the year 1300, every single cliff palace was empty. This is the mystery that breaks all logic. The official story points to the Great Drought, a 24-year period of no rain. But this explanation is too simple. Why would you abandon your only source of shade, your safest stronghold, during a time of intense crisis? The zero-point lore points to the architecture itself. These cities were not built to defend against a drought. They were built to defend against an enemy. An enemy so terrifying, so relentless, that even these impossible fortresses were not enough. The Anasazi built the ultimate defense, and something or someone proved it was useless. They did not migrate, they fled, and we have no idea what was chasing them. Our final ghost is the most important and the most mysterious, because this may be the civilization that started it all. This is Göbekli Tepe. As we've explored before, this site shatters our official timeline. It is a 12,000-year-old megalithic complex, 7,000 years older than the pyramids, built by people who were supposedly primitive hunter-gatherers. It is the ground zero of human civilization, the origin point. This was not a mud hut. This was a cathedral of the Stone Age, built with astronomical knowledge and impossible engineering skill. A society capable of organizing thousands of workers to move 20-ton blocks of stone. They were the founders, the first ones. And then they vanished. But this is the final mind-breaking fracture point. They did not abandon their temple. They buried it. Sometime around 8000 BCE, the builders of Göbekli Tepe, this first civilization, deliberately and painstakingly buried their entire magnificent creation under millions of tons of earth, rock, and animal bones. Why? Why would you spend centuries building the most incredible structure on Earth, only to then spend the next few centuries erasing it? This is the zero-point connection. The timeline matches. The burial of Göbekli Tepe coincides perfectly with the final chaotic melts of the Younger Dryas cataclysm, the Great Flood. This was not an act of destruction. It was an act of preservation. They knew the world was ending. They knew their cycle was over. They could not save their civilization, but they could save the message. They were not just the origin civilization. They were the survivors of the reset, the Indus Valley, the Mayan, the Minoans, the Anasazi, the builders of the flood. These are not 5 separate, unrelated stories of bad luck and bad weather. They are 5 distinct, terrifying warnings. We look at them from our modern world of glass and steel, and we call them primitive. But they are ghosts, standing at our shoulder whispering the one truth we refuse to hear.
that progress is not a line, that our technology cannot save us, that civilizations, no matter how great, are fragile. They are proof that collapse is not an event, it is a cycle. The question is no longer what happened to them. The question is, when do we join them? These cycles of collapse are the exact mysteries we are dedicated to exploring. If you believe that history is a map of warnings and that we are a civilization with amnesia, subscribe to 0 Point Lore. Join the investigation. And we want to hear your theory. Of these 5 great collapses, which one do you find the most terrifying? And what other advanced civilization do you believe vanished that we should investigate next? Let us know in the comments below.